Well, we're all hoping I'm actually on right now. We're doing this show very blindly today because Mark is actually in the northern New Mexico mountains. I'm in our studio. I can't see Mark or video, and Ella can't see me or video. So, Mark, tell us you're there. Just
I am here, and let me just go. We'll go to the gallery shot so everyone can see both of us. Everyone can see both of us. Just
okay,
trust me
good.
on that.
Okay,
It's good.
we're putting a lot of faith in you today, Mark, to make sure that you do this well.
Yeah, that's probably misplaced, but we'll give it a shot anyway. So it's going to be a different kind of show, actually. So the reason why is because we got a lot of really good feedback from you guys, and we're going to start on that. Some of it kind of pushes back on some of the stuff we're doing, and we kind of picked out the various emails where we thought we're kind of pushing back a little bit because we want to discuss that, and we love the fact that you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us a quick, just quick update on what we're going to talk about today. Just a quick.
Yeah, we're gonna have some questions about.
Quick tease.
Quick one.
Yeah.
So we'll do some of the viewer comments talking about some of the governor's race stuff, also talking about some of the chemtrail stuff that we talked about last week. We're going to check in on the mayor's race. Both candidates have a new ad out. So we'll go through that and what that's all about. And then we're going to talk a deep dive on the economy. The Trump administration has pivoted their messaging. We talked about it last week, that messaging was not good. Well, what we're seeing now is a significant pivot, and it's not going to be an easy pivot necessarily, but we'll talk about it. We'll check in on our guy Fetterman. And of course, we've got Sunday game day.
Okay. All right. So let's jump in real quick and let's start with some of the mail that we got in from you guys. Number one, we appreciate all the comments that you guys make. If you want to make further comments, go to our website at nodoubtaboutitpodcast.com and drop us an email. You can also make a donation there. We've gotten those requests as well. Like, where do we donate? Go there as well. Or you can simply like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and make comments on our YouTube channel as well. But you do have to be a subscriber for those comments to come into us. So just a heads up on that one. Okay, let's start with stuff I make, I guess. Okay. This one says, I find it very disingenuous of you to bring up the Cannabis King issue while ignoring that Darren White was a lobbyist for legalizing it and donated the max amount to MLG when he was trying to get it legalized in the legislature because he knew it wouldn't pass by sending it to the public for a public vote. I want to say really quickly before I hand this off to you, Mark, that for this person, thank you so much, first of all, for making a comment. Number two, we have actually drilled Darren White about both of those things on our previous shows multiple times. So if you have not watched our shows about Darren White, we absolutely discussed both of those things with him. The biggest difference I see is, yes, he donated to MLG. Talk about somebody who wasn't happy about that. It's me. But he also did donate to Mark and other Republican candidates. So Mark, I'm going to toss that over to you and you can continue on that one.
Yeah, no, I think that a couple things on this. I think it's a fair thing to bring up, but I think some of what Christy says is absolutely true. When we got in the governor's race, one of the first calls I got was from Darren White saying, what can I do to help you? What do you need to do? Darren White has also been a Republican candidate for Congress. He ran against Martin Heinrich. He's been a Republican for as long as I've known him here. And so that's a huge part of this. And when you look at someone's donation history, the reason we talk about that is it's one thing to say, both sidesism sort of thing. I gave to both sides. And I think you can make somewhat that case with Darren. My problem is when you look at Duke, what we talked about is in relation to Republican primaries, we brought up three things that he's going to struggle with. Why do we do that? Because we want to give you the truth. And that's the truth. He is going to struggle with that. And we'll get into another email on it here in just a second. But I think part of the issue with Duke is the fact that Duke did not give to any major Republican. He hasn't. He's given to a few smaller candidates in some small races, people that probably support some of the stuff he supports. Have I ever heard from Duke when I ran? No. Has any other major Republican? Not that I can tell. So again, that's the difference here. And we're always going to tell you the truth. Now, at the end of the day, could Duke still be successful? Yeah, he could be if things work out the right way for him. But the reality of the situation is when you step in to a Republican primary with a lot of principled voters and you stand up and say, well, I'm Trump. I can do what I want, or I can play both sides or whatever. Okay, that's all well and good, but it's one thing to play both sides. It's another to give maximum donations to people like Raul Torres, who sues Donald Trump, and MLG, okay? It's just different, okay? Now, could he get away with it? I don't know if he gets away with it or not. We'll see what ends up happening here. But at the end of the day, we have brought Darren on this show. We have questioned him for what he's done. And then beyond that, we have obviously gotten Darren's support when we have run and been in the middle of the fight. And Darren has been in the middle of the fight for more than a decade here. So that's why I don't think it's fair to compare the two of them at all. But again, no problem with the email kind of questioning that. It's a good discussion.
Okay, well, you're jumping in and ahead and answering like some of these other ones, Mark. But so this next one comes in from Bandicoot Nerd. It says the thing about Duke's donation history is that if he donated to any GOPers whatsoever, he can just use the Trump's 2015 answer of, quote, I do business, I donate to everyone.
Okay, hold on. Can I jump in right there just real quickly?
No, just wait.
No, just let's take it piece by piece,
cool.
because if you read the whole thing, it's hard to do. So no, that's not true. You don't get to do that. You can say that, and you could say, well, I donated to, a state Senate candidate in Roswell, so therefore I'm a Republican. Nope, it doesn't work that way. You can say that, and you can say, oh, it's no big deal. It's both sidesism. It doesn't work that way, especially if you have somebody running against you who has some means to push back.
Okay, so it goes. The comment goes on and says, whether that goes over or not with primary voters or not, we'll see. The whole quote, does he live in the state thing was something Nella faced, and it ended up not being a big deal.
Okay, hold on on that real quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, to run for governor, that's a different deal altogether. It's not the same race as a Senate race, number one. And we're talking about a legal issue here. It's not a personal thing where, do I think they're here enough? Do I think Duke is here enough? Nothing to do with that at all. Our point was, if it gets down to Maggie Toulouse-Oliver and saying, wait a minute, you're not an actual resident of the state of New Mexico, that's a problem. This is a legal issue. It is not an issue of Nella Dominici having multiple homes and running for the United States Senate. It is different for governor, and this is a legal issue. It has nothing to do with it hurting him with voters. It has to do with him being disqualified legally. Keep going.
Okay. And this is as far as the cannabis thing goes, does anything say New Mexico Republican more than a guy who worked for and is endorsed by Gary Johnson and made millions selling weed, especially with semi-open primaries? If being a weed mogul significantly hurt his chances, I doubt he'd be running for governor in the first place. Now, could Mark or Susana Martinez beat him? Yeah, ain't no way Greg Hull or Steve Lanier are beating Duke. Hence why if the pool doesn't grow, he'd be the front runner. Okay, so why don't you take on the whole Gary Johnson semi-open primaries? Because we've had lots of discussion about this with people who come up and talk to us about these open primaries and an endorsement by Gary Johnson.
Yeah, well, I love Gary Johnson. He endorsed me. I like him a lot. I don't think it's not an endorsement that, wins you a primary, especially a Republican primary, but he's a great guy. And I think when you can get his endorsement, you should. So that's good. I think this is actually a really smart comment at the end here as well. I like the whole comment in general because I think it's a good discussion. But I think that the biggest issue with this whole deal is, especially with what we're talking about with the semi-open primaries, we've just started with this. There have been literally thousands of candidates who think they can get people to cross over and vote for them and everything else. It doesn't work. You never get enough people that ends up swinging the election. Now, every year can be different, and it may help them a little bit, but it would help on the margins. It's not going to help as some big swell of voters in the middle that are going to come in and say, we're going to support one candidate or another. It's the same reason we've said that Sam Bregman is not going to be successful running as a centrist in the Democratic primary. He has to get more left-wing votes. He just has to. That's where all the numbers are. You can't run as a centrist in these primaries anymore. It's very difficult to win. And just like a Republican couldn't come in and say, I'm going to be the centrist in all this, because hardcore Republicans and hardcore Democrats are who drive this process here. So Duke doing that won't work. Now, as far as Hull goes and as far as Steve Lanier goes, you may well be right on this. They may not be able to get enough support, enough money to be able to overwhelm Duke. And I think you're also right. A well-known Republican would trounce Duke. But when you look at the fact that we have a couple Republicans in the race right now who aren't as well known, I think it's a fair point. You know what, Chrissy, when I read all these comments and when you sent them over, I just swelled with pride at our audience because it's really good. I mean, this stuff is really interesting, and I think it's really cool.
Let me add this one too. I haven't actually told you about this one, but on Twitter too, I also went to X. I also went to there, and there's kind of some back and forth there as well about, well, if we're going to be so basically picky, I mean, I'm definitely summarizing the comments,
Sure.
but we're so picky as the GOP to put up the right, this perfect nomination. We're never going to find somebody decent to run. And this is why there's not enough people to run the bench for the Republican side. And my argument on that is, and I'll let you jump in on this as well. My argument is there's absolutely the right candidates out there that could jump in as a Republican. But number one, I think they have to be a Republican. They have to show that they have been a actual Republican, have backed Republicans, and that they live and love New Mexico. I think that's very important, something that we personally have experience with. I think it's an uphill battle in a 10 plus Democratic state right now, 10 points plus. So it's an uphill battle for any Republican that gets in, but it makes it even, something that we have to take incredibly seriously, because not only do you need to be a Republican, live in the state, be proud of New Mexico, you have to be able to be well known across a statewide race for a primary, especially. And you have to have the ability to raise significant funds, significant. We're talking multi-million dollars to be able to compete against the Democratic nomination. So I just think, while it might seem hopeless, it's not hopeless. There's candidates that can do this. I think Mark, I'm just going to speak for Mark because he's not going to, this is not what Mark does. He doesn't toot his own horn. He never has. But I will tell you that Mark came incredibly close. He came within 44,000 votes of winning a statewide election. That's really hard to do in this climate. We don't have the swing voters that we once did under somebody like a Susana Martinez. That doesn't exist anymore. So you have a very divided political climate in this state. And the fact of the matter is, and this is what I said so much out there during the governor's race and right after the governor's race, which I get. And Mark always says, who cares about the second place winner, right, in a governor's race? But I hold back on looking at the data of stuff. And I think it's fascinating to see that how close Mark actually came. And I think that what gets lost on us sometimes is we lose hope in that. We lose hope in the fact that we can actually get very close, if not win this. It's winnable. It's not like it's not. So anyway, okay, I've gone on my.
But would you stop with our campaign? Would you just stop that right now? We're not in the middle of this right now.
It's
we're
not.
not.
Like
it's ridiculous.
I understand that, but
it doesn't. But
saying,
I'm talking about the fact that here's the issue, and I will get a little part of your thing. I do appreciate your defense. That's why I love you. But I will say though. I think one of the things that's interesting, and you sort of alluded to it, and it is the fact that to win a race now, a political race of any kind, you have to turn out your voters, okay? And I think one of the problems you have, and I totally understand the logic of we can't be too picky. I do get that. I think that makes a lot of sense because when you go into certain political environments, there is no perfect candidate. There's no question. But the problem is, in this day and age, turning out your voters is critical. And if you have a lack of enthusiasm by your most ardent supporters, the people that are the backbone of your party, you have a problem. It's the reason that when Trump wins and when Trump runs, you get a lot more turnout, right? And obviously presidential elections get more turnout and everything else. But Trump has been able to mobilize a base because the Republican base now is much more of a base of not voting as often, but when they do vote, they turn out big numbers and it can change things. So overall, I think what's interesting here is if you get someone like Duke, what you risk is you risk a big portion of the base going, you're not really one of us, okay? And now, there's the one thing Duke can do, and that is prove that you are. Stand up, sit down with people and say, here's who I am, here's what I'm all about, here's why I've only given to one side, basically, and it's not your side. And he explains it. I don't know, maybe he can do it.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off because we got to keep moving, guy.
I can't believe you're cutting me off.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, right.
I just feel like we got to get to the actual, a lot of stories today. And we just want to hit a couple more comments really quickly. So I'm going to transition this really quickly back to that story that we talked about with the chemtrails, the Tucker Carlson interview. So this one came in. I'm not even going to try to say who this person is because it's a very complicated email. But the comment says, if chemtrails and Dane Wigington are just, quote, conspiracy theories, Mark, then why are investing him? The EPA has a number to report them now. Maybe you need to get up to speed.
Okay, sorry, you cut out there slightly on our internet connection. So he says, Mark, then why are Trump, Lee Zeldin, and the EPA, RFK Jr. investigating chemtrails? Okay, first of all, I didn't call it conspiracy theory, number one. I want to just briefly play for you the video that we're talking about here, and I won't play it all the way through. Ella, we're just going to play it really quickly here, a portion of this. This is Dean Wigington here, and what he's going to talk about here is totally ludicrous and bonkers. And so let's just listen to this real quickly, and then Els, I'll tell you when to cut it off.
How did meteorologists know 7 days in advance that Hurricane Harvey was going to go where it went and sit there for 3 days? How could they possibly know that? These people are reading scripts, Tucker. They're literally reading scripts passed down to them by Raytheon.
Okay, right there is fine. Right there. Let's just cut him. Let's just cut him right there, because he says meteorologists are reading scripts from Raytheon. My point was, don't listen to people that are bonkers. Okay. Now, whether you want to, talk about what happens with chemtrails and everything else, and again, there are a lot of people who say, hey, this could be trying to alter our weather and cool the planet and everything else. Okay, look, meteorologically, there's a lot of stuff here that doesn't add up to me. Okay, first of all, if you were going to try to cool the planet and things of that nature, you wouldn't do it at 30,000 feet in the troposphere where you fly airplanes. You do it at 60 to 80,000 feet up in the stratosphere, where you could theoretically try to mimic what happens with a volcano. Okay, for example, if we're just taking that small little thing. So whether I think of it or not think of it, I have some doubts on it. But again, I'm willing to be educated down the road, no question. All I'm saying is, and this show is all about the fact that we're going to tell you the truth. This guy's bonkers. So when you listen to him and he says stupid things, I don't want people to go grab this guy and say, well, there's some other things he says that are really smart. Well, if you and I pull up next to each other at a gas station and I'm like, by the way, that's not gasoline you're putting in your car, that's actually unicorn horns that they ground up and made a liquid out of, that's what's really running your car, you'd be like, you're crazy, dude. And so all I'm telling you is, this guy's over the line and ridiculous. That's all. Just make sure that you listen to good sources here, and we're never going to back off from telling you what we actually think.
Okay, one more comment on that is from Serenity, and she says, geoengineering weather modification. She puts a quote in here. Quote, it lays the predicate and foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather. And he controls the weather, will control the world. That's a quote from Vice President Johnson at Southwest Texas State. Her comment goes on to say, if you don't think that decades later the globalists have accomplished this, you are kidding yourselves. Wake up. It's a real thing. Did you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, I think meteorologically, it turns out that the conditions when all this stuff happens with the expansion of a cirrus cloud layer, that happens at a time when we have additional moisture in the upper troposphere. Like that's what happens. So again, you could say, now I understand the point here, which is if you add more high layer clouds or high level clouds, you can reduce the amount of solar insolation. That can happen, okay? But I'm just saying, and again, I don't know where all of this goes. I'm just telling you along the way here that when people that are bonkers say bonkers things, don't listen to them.
Okay. And last, I'm not going to read the whole comment, but Mark, it was really funny. One woman wrote in and she noticed you weren't wearing your wedding ring.
Yeah. Well, Christy and I have been struggling, and no. Actually, yeah, here it is right here. But I have a new wedding ring. So here's what happened. I slammed my finger with an excavator on the Mark versus the Mountain show we're working on. The old ring that I had was a tungsten ring. And for those of you who know tungsten, you can't get it off your finger if you break your finger. And I came real close to breaking this finger and this finger. So it made me think I cannot wear a tungsten ring anymore. So now I ordered a rubber ring. That's the explanation.
Okay. I mean, those are some eagle eyes that caught that one. Okay. Let's dive into the stories that we got today. First up, we've got this mayor's runoff heating up, right? The runoff is December 9th. So we are just a little over 2.5 weeks away from that. And we've got new ads. So why don't we talk a little bit about this? First ad.
Yeah, Darren's got an ad out, and so does Tim Keller. So we want to play both ads. One is very interesting, and the other is Tim Keller. So let's go ahead and we will first. Here is Darren's ad that he has up right now.
Tim Keller's record, over 750 homicides, homeless tent cities everywhere. We need change now. Darren White for mayor, veteran of the elite 82nd Airborne, 2-term sheriff, tough on crime.
I'm running for mayor to get serious about crime. And the tent encampments, they come down on day one.
Darren White for mayor.
I'm Darren White, and I approve this message because it's time for a change.
Paid for by Darren White for mayor.
Okay,
so
fairly
yeah.
clean, right?
Yeah, he's definitely going after Tim Keller.
Yeah, and I think obviously the two issues that are most important, right, for voters, which we know 60+% of voters want to deal with homelessness and they want to deal with crime.
Mm-hmm. So pretty clean
Yeah.
situation there.
Yeah.
And this is not going to surprise anybody about what Keller decides to do with his ad, right? Because we've been talking about it.
Yeah, and we knew that Keller would go try to run against Donald Trump. It's his best chance to win. So he's going to try to create this fake race where he's running against Donald Trump when it's actually a mayoral race in Albuquerque, which is ludicrous. But here's the ad.
Do you want this in Albuquerque? Darren White would let Donald Trump round up innocent people.
ICE will come in and they will look at everybody.
As head of police, Darren White's chaos led to shootings of innocent people, costing taxpayers millions. A stain on APD. He was forced to resign. And the homeless?
You bet I said I'll take the gloves off.
It's illegal and cruel. It's all why the police endorsed Tim Keller.
Approved by Tim Keller.
Okay. First of all, there's a line in there which is, I am shocked that the APOA, the Albuquerque Police Officers Association, endorsed Tim Keller. I have no idea why. I like Sean Willoughby. We've had him on the show. I reached out to him. I haven't heard back from him yet on why they did this. Because in that ad, if you listen very carefully at the beginning, he says innocent people were shot by APD. Innocent people. APD is gunning down people in the streets. Like, what are they talking about? What is Keller talking about? I mean, that is, I can't believe the stations let him air it and let him say it because it's not true. And it's a stain on police officers in Albuquerque. So that part of it is shocking. And then, look, all he's trying to do is muddy up the waters here. And APOA's endorsement is letting him do that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it's weird. I mean, have we seen any fact checking on either one of these ads yet?
Yes, and actually there was some fact checking. Yeah, there was, and a lot of the fact checking has come out, very strongly in support of where Darren is on this. So he did get some support from the networks on that.
Okay, well at least that's good. So okay, again, you guys, that early voting starts on December 1st, I believe. So we'll keep you guys posted on how that is starting to shake out. But again, that's going to be a heated race, I believe. So, yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit. Let's shift a little bit more to some national news. Obviously, we've got the shutdown now is over, thank goodness. But the big thing that we've been talking about is that can Trump help us? Like, can he bring back some messaging and some actual strategy to help us with the economy?
Yeah, and I think what you saw this week, and this is why we want to take a deep dive on this, and I'll try to move it quickly because I've already been scolded for not moving fast enough. So I want to move, babe, I want to move kind of quickly on this, but I want to have you talk about an article from the Wall Street Journal, and then we're going to have about 3 or 4 different stories here that show a complete pivot from what you saw last week. Remember, our issue last week was Trump was saying, look, the economy's better than you think. If things are going well, things are going well. You don't hear that right now from the administration, and I think you can start to see a real change here.
Okay, so this is coming out from the Wall Street Journal. The headline says White House hunts for ways to lower the cost of living. Aside from reducing tariffs, Trump has a limited ability to bring down prices. And a couple of poll quotes we came out of this. It says President Trump and his advisors are rushing to try to lower prices for U.S. consumers after voters sent a warning shot to Republicans this month over the high cost of living. Following the recent election, Trump's aides have urged the president to focus on affordability, and they are drawing up plans to attempt to address voters' frustrations, according to administration officials. The president's team is discussing more deals with pharmaceutical companies to make prescription drugs cheaper, approvals for new offshore drilling projects, and new healthcare proposals, the official said. The president has also ordered up new ideas to address the high cost of living. However, this is going to maybe prove to be a little bit more difficult to lower those prices so quickly. So it goes on to say, it won't be easy to lower prices in a way that satisfies voters who have signaled in polls that they want far-reaching changes that will make everyday life more affordable. Most prices are dictated by market forces that are beyond the president's control. Interest rates are set by the independent Federal Reserve, which has so far resisted Trump's pressure campaign. The president would need congressional approval to issue direct payments to Americans. So here's a little bit of the reality. It's this final quote from the story. Quote, "It's not Trump's fault. It wasn't going to get that much better in months of a presidency," said a GOP pollster. Quote, "But when people are this ticked off, they don't have a patience button."
Yeah. So this tells you exactly what we talked about, which is, okay, this is difficult. It's not going to be easy to move things. Once prices go up, it's very hard to move them back down again. And so that's an issue. So what are they going to do to deal with this? Well, I think what you're starting to see here, and I'm surprised you didn't see it before this, but you're seeing it now, is I think a 1-2 punch. Punch number one is right out of the Obama playbook, which he did when he took over a difficult economy in 2008 for George W. Bush. He relentlessly blamed George W. Bush, okay? And so that's exactly what Trump is starting to do with Biden. And then they're trying to do a pivot. So they're trying to do the blame and pivot. So the blame goes to Biden, and then the pivot goes to the solution. And so that's what you'll see here. So let's start with Peter Doocy from Fox News, who talks about the comparison between the first year of the Biden administration and the first year of the second Trump administration, and watch the messaging in which they gave Doocy here, and he dutifully reports it.
Overall inflation for the first year of Trump versus Biden. Biden, overall inflation was up 4.3%, higher than Trump, just up 1.6%. Groceries under Biden in that time, up 3.8%, with Trump up 1.3%. And then when it comes to gas, this is crazy. Biden up 24.4%. With Trump, it is actually down 5.4%. That is where the biggest difference is. And we heard from the HUD Secretary, Scott Turner, this afternoon. They are racing to cut red tape for construction projects because the belief among officials here is that if housing is the number one place where people are getting killed when it comes to affordability, if people are cutting red tape and able to build more houses and apartments, then the prices will come down. Pretty basic supply and demand in play. Will.
All right, good numbers.
Okay, so you see it there, Christy, right? You see the blame pivot, and housing, though, as you well know, that's not going to turn quickly.
Yeah, it definitely will not turn quickly. I think it's interesting, though, that just trying to get a hold of the message, right? Because so far, all you have Democrats talking about are the prices, which is always interesting. You get on X and people are like, where were you during the Biden administration when these prices were even higher? So, it's an interesting dynamic that like what you said, I'm not sure why Trump hasn't, I kind of feel like, I don't know, maybe Trump isn't hey, let me get in here and just start blaming everything. And so instead he was like trying to focus on how, his programs would make America great again. I mean, honestly, to sound as corny as that sounds, I think that could be what his motive was at the beginning of coming in, as he's making all these changes, instead of really worrying about, let me blame the other guy on this and then kind of toot my own horn about what we're doing effectively. But that doesn't work great because you have to get that message out to people that, hey, prices are actually going down in most of these areas compared to where we've been under the Biden administration. So I think that was kind of interesting.
They aren't. But the problem is, on energy and things like that, they are going down. But the problem is with inflation is that they're not going down overall, right? So they're not going up at the rate they were under Biden, but they're not going down, right? So that's part of the problem with a lot of these things, meat and all different sorts of products that you're paying more and more for, with the exception of energy. And I get energy because energy is connected to everything. If energy is cheaper, everything else is cheaper. I know they're working on that. But let's go to the National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett. Very similar here too. Watch what he does. He'll stick blame and then he'll pivot.
Well, first of all, if you look at the history of inflation, right, what happened was that there was runaway Democrat spending in Joe Biden's term, and we got inflation up almost to 10%. It averaged 5% over the 4 years. And that has created a situation where, for example, mortgage rates went up. And so the typical payment for a monthly mortgage payment almost doubled. A bag of groceries that cost $400 a month when President Trump left office is $500 or $515 when President Trump came back this time. And so that there's this really big hole that's been dug. And then the question you could also ask as an economist is like, how do I summarize all those different prices and everything? And one of the ways you could do it is just look at purchasing power, the real wage. But purchasing power, I'll just finish this and then I'll get back to it. The purchasing power dropped by about $3,000 under Joe Biden because the wages didn't keep up with prices. Under President Trump, it's already gone up by about $1,200. We understand that people still feel the pain of the high prices, but we're closing the gap and filling the gap fast.
I don't want to get it.
Okay, so again, what they're trying to get to, you got to grow your way out of it. Basically, is the point in a lot of these things, and I think when we look back, the damage that was done, it really was unprecedented. When you look at what happened with inflation and interest rates, those two together were devastating. And I think it's why Trump is president again. There's no question. And so dealing with all these things, I think part of the problem, Christy, is that some of the Trump focus was not laser beam on this stuff right from the beginning to say, we are on this like crazy. And so that's been the problem here. And I think people do understand you can't flip a switch and prices are going to drop 20%. You can't do it. But what you can do is give people the impression that every waking moment, that's what you're most concerned about.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's what I was kind of trying to allude to before that clip, was just the fact that his focus was on other things, trying to handle some foreign policy issues, definitely focusing on the tariffs, and kind of, I think he kind of thought in his own, I shouldn't try to think for Trump, because obviously I don't, but I do believe that the economy, because he is a business guy, has always been top of mind for him. It's what he campaigned on, right? So yeah. I just think that the messaging to the American people is what was lacking, not necessarily what he's been trying to do.
Well,
so I think
but I think it's also, I think you're absolutely right. But one other thing on this is the tariffs. I don't think you could afford to do the tariffs when he did them. Right. So in other words, you really do. And I understand the point of, hey, we may need to reorder the economy and everything else. But when you look at where voters were and then you decide right out of the chute, you're going tariffs, I think they may have misread where they were. And so because they misread where they were, they thought they could plow ahead with tariffs, get some leeway from people to try to reorder the economy. When they found out very quickly, people said, no, we are struggling right now. And so adding on to that, and again, tariffs didn't do as much to raise prices as a lot of people said they would, but they still have raised prices in some various categories, no question. So that makes it harder. So interesting stuff there. And I think it's going to be interesting to continue to watch here. But so then the other thing, Chrissy, that you have to get to is hope.
Right. Absolutely. Which you have Scott Besson. He was on Fox News as well. And he's basically saying, hey, people, just be patient because 2026, things will be better. So here's a little snippet from him.
I think we are going to see a substantial acceleration in the economy in the second quarter. And I think we are also, we're already seeing on many prices, as I said, we're bending that curve down, and the increase in real incomes, I think Americans are going to feel it in the first quarter, second quarter. I think 2026, thanks to President Trump's signature plans, is going to be a great year for working Americans, for the markets. I call it parallel prosperity. Main Street and Wall Street can both do great, but I think Main Street's going to have a great year in 2026.
Okay, super interesting. And this is smart too, because again, think back, if we're looking at an election and an inauguration in the third week of January, and all of a sudden you saw this messaging right out of the chute, here we come, here's what we're doing, you got to give us some time, we'll fix this, in placing the political blame, which happens all the time, and then saying there's hope, it's going to get better, that would have made a lot more sense. It would have put them in a lot better position than I think that they're in. And there's one little part of this as well, after your thoughts on it.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead and lead into this one.
Okay. So my only thought on this, and I want to add just one more thing on this deep dive, and that is from Lori Chavez Dremer, who is the U.S. Labor Secretary. So last week, Trump had I think, not a great moment with Laura Ingraham when he said, basically, we do need to bring more people in. Some of our people can't do some of these high-tech jobs. And there are plenty of Americans who are like, what? Yes, we can. I think that was a messaging problem for the Trump administration. So I want you to see, so this all pairs with the economic message, which basically says America first. We've got to get as many Americans in good jobs as we possibly can. And so listen to the change in her approach here, and it's a deft little change. She does a good job delivering the message here of basically saying we need to give good jobs to Americans first, and we may need to bring some other people in as well, but it's America first.
Thank you for bringing up Project Firewall. Almost 200 investigations now have been brought forward. And what's important to recognize is that there are companies who are using the H-1 visa program who are abusing the program. What we want to make sure is we're always protecting the American worker. The president is absolutely correct. And not all things are and or. They can be together. And what we want to make sure is that we're providing the skilled workforce so that Americans have these jobs first and foremost. If that is not the case, and these businesses need to apply for the H-1B visa program, we want to make sure that they're following the law and not abusing and depressing American wages with foreign labor. That is not the goal of the program. We want integrity. I want to work with the Department of Homeland to make sure that they have that. So Project Firewall, it is the first time in history that the Secretary will use all the tools, and I have been able to sign personally some of these investigations. We will clamp down on these companies who are abusing and depressing wages and not protecting the American worker first.
Okay, so some
the
clarifying
there,
message.
right?
Yeah, definitely clarifying that.
Yeah. And she says basically there's some abuse here and we have to be able to fix that abuse. Notice the vast majority of that messaging was America first. Right.
So he definitely was getting hit back from the fact that you're talking about, bringing chip manufacturing and things back here, that we're not prepared to do that. And so you have to bring in some folks that are experts in this industry to come over here to America to teach us, right? And he definitely got some hits on that one because people are like, listen, during World War II, we stepped up to the plate and learned how to do technologies. We had women in factories that were doing things that had no idea how to do that before they were called to do that. And I think what Trump, again, is trying to say is, well, we could do it faster if we bring in people that know how to do this first and teach Americans how to do that. And then those experts basically press on out of here. As kind of
Lori Dremer was not saying anything any different than Trump did, but what she did was, sorry, I got a little call there, jumped out. What she did say, though, was she focused it differently, right? She focused it on America first and then said, yes, there are times we need to bring people in. This is a messaging thing, and Trump got himself, I think, into some difficulty with Laura Ingraham on a few different messaging points this week. What you'll see is, I think, further movement from the White House on trying to keep this message on the economy and to keep it disciplined. And I think, part of working with the Trump administration sometimes is clean up on aisle 6, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely just clarifying his message. Okay, so last week we brought you this kind of a crazy story of Senator Fetterman really talking about how many personal hits he's taking from his own party or from the extremists in his party, really trying to kind of attack him for saying, listen, I think we should open up the government and trying to, basically just get things back to being able to pay people. And he took a lot of hits on that. And we were just talking about that last week. Well, then, unfortunately, he fell this past week. As many of you probably have already heard, he had to get 20 stitches. And, when you hear about that, you think, well, what happened? Obviously, he had an issue. I believe he has a pacemaker. So something went off with that. And for us, I felt bad for the guy because you don't want him to get injured. You don't want anything to be injured. And here's a tweet that the Pennsylvania GOP put out. We wanted to share this because we thought actually it was the right thing to do. It's the right messaging to be putting out there. And it's the right thing to be praying and hoping for Senator Fetterman's health, right? So he says, praying for John Fetterman. Senator Fetterman recently suffered a fall and was transported to the hospital in Pittsburgh. We are thinking of him, his wife, and their entire family as he makes his recovery. So I just think that is what we need to do. And kind of what we've talked about last week is that these personal attacks towards people have to stop. Like, you can disagree on policy all day long, but when the hurtful things that his own party, people in his own party are saying to him and attacking him on are over the line. And again, so here's just a quick picture of him after the accident. Definitely took a shot. I mean, you can see his face, but he, I think he wants to come back out and say, hey, listen, I'm still here. And,
And the thing is about that message, it shouldn't be unusual or strange that the Republican Party of Pennsylvania says, we're praying for you. We hope you're okay. But when you go back and look at where we are with some of the violence going on and some of the people cheering on violence or misfortune from other people, that's the kind of thing where you say, what is happening here? And so I think when you watch that little tweet from the Pennsylvania GOP, you say, thank you. And that's how we all should be in these situations. And when there's violence perpetrated against people in this country, you should stand up and stand against it and not cheer it on, which we've seen far too often. And so I hope we get to a place where this stuff doesn't happen anymore. But with Fetterman, obviously, wish him the best, praying for him, because I think he is, and I said it last week, he's one of the most principled, gutsiest people in the United States Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're gonna end with this story, which I think is kind of interesting. A new GOP poll came out, or Gallup poll came out, and it was talking about how there's a rise in women ages 15 to 44 who would like to leave the U.S. permanently. So I'm going to play this clip and then we'll discuss it a little bit.
And say they want to leave the country permanently. This is according to a new Gallup poll. 20% of people say they want to live somewhere else. That's 1 in 5. And the shift is mainly driven by young women, ages 15 to 44. 40% of them say that they want to go. And Martha and I texted about this last night because I'm thinking we've had an opportunity to travel many places around the world. To me, there is no better place in America. If you were born here, George Bush used to say, you won life's great lottery.
Exactly right.
You're an American woman, your ticket, you write it yourself, but people want to leave.
Yeah, I think it's true. When you travel other places, which we both love to do, it's always fascinating, but then you're always glad to come home and you always appreciate the great things about this country. There's a lot of parallels in this group between the vote that we saw on Tuesday in New Jersey and in Virginia when you look at the age range. The other thing is that it doesn't ask, are you going to leave? It just says, basically it's like at a cocktail party, would you say, I really want to get out of here. I really want to leave the country, but they're not actually leaving the country. So it's just wah, complaining. And there's a lot of Trump derangements.
They all want to be Emily in Paris.
Oh, yeah, but they want, and I think it's
be Emily in New York.
It's a protest vote against the president, I think, because it traces right back to when he was nominated, And so while you have so many young women at these turning point events and the other side is thriving in a huge way, this group likes to, at least at cocktail parties, say that they want out. But I don't think they're going anywhere.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting, Mark, just because, so just to phrase the question really quickly, I put this in here that the participants were asked this question. They were asked, ideally, if you had the opportunity, would you like to move permanently to another country, or would you prefer to continue living in this country? And I wanted to clarify that question just because I thought it was interesting. I think a couple of things that stood out to me about this is, so a couple of years ago, this was actually even higher. So it has dropped a little bit, but it's interesting that this is the first time they say that this gap between the men in the same age bracket and the women in this age bracket have differed so much. And, I think another little note that I pulled from this Gallup survey was that the number one places that these young women want to move is Canada. Okay. And then it comes in like Japan, New Zealand, I think is the other one. And so I just also think the other thing I would add on this is the youth, like putting a 15-year-old and a 44-year-old in the same category is interesting to me, because I think what 15-year-old, I mean, I'm sorry, when I was graduating college, I was like, oh, I'm going to go teach English in Prague. Like, I'm going to go travel the world. I'm going to go see the sights. I think the younger mindset is not necessarily politically motivated to leave the country. It's more like, I want to go out and see the world. So I think it would have been better for Gallup to maybe break this down a little bit, maybe like a 30 to 44-year-old. Once you have a career, once you're making money, and, are you still like, hey, I got to leave? And I would argue, obviously, I believe that there's so many opportunities for women here in America, and we are treated so unbelievably well in America that I think you're nuts if you're just like, yeah, I'd rather go someplace else. I would challenge, where do you want to go that you think life is so much greener on the other side? I mean, that'd be what my thoughts were.
Okay. All right. Well, good stuff. All right. Well, I've got two more.
You got nothing? You got nothing to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an inane question, and it's okay. Then go. I mean, I don't know. See you later. Don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. Whatever. So I think I think some of it's a political statement, and some of it may be exactly what you're talking about. And that's probably a really good point. Like some of what you're saying, that the age bracket, and then also, maybe some of it's political, which Martha McCallum made that point. So it's an interesting story, though. It is interesting. And I think it does reveal a little more. You mentioned it more specifically, the split between men and women. I'm worried about the split between men and women in general. I just think that we have these two separate groups now that seem to be just going further apart, when I think the way God intended it was for us to come together and make a great society. So or a great planet too. I just think it's so important, and I worry about those relationships. But all right, now let's get to something that's really important. I got two quick game day shots. The first one, good looking buck right here. I mean, out of the chute, this guy is good. Let's see if we can get him. Hold on. Let me see if I got him here. Hold on. Sorry, Ella. I screwed up our thing. Here we go. Okay, let's do it again, Els. Here we go. Look at this buck here, babe. I mean, go ahead and put him in. Look at that.
Oh yeah. Now, do you think it's the same guy that we had last week? Or I
don't know, but he is top notch. I mean, and obviously got through a good portion of hunting season, so he's feeling good. Now, I was thinking that was going to be my only Sunday game day. Turns out, no. Look at this. This morning, I got bailed out by the bobcat who comes running through. Back. Look at him. That's this morning at 9:28 a.m. There it goes, Ella. Good job.
Oh, he's cute, actually. I mean,
he looks good. So he's one of the two.
Bobcat, but
we see him in the bigger guy. There's a bigger one than him. One more, Ella. Let's give him a little more. We see him a little. He's a little smaller than the other big guy that comes through. So there we go. That's where we go.
Right. So they didn't fail you. They haven't let you down once yet, Mark.
I know.
You're getting
good.
I know. Your fellows keep showing up for you.
I know.
All right, you guys, thanks so much for spending a little bit of your day with us. We appreciate it. Remember, if you are interested in finding out more about No Doubt About It, go to our website, nodoubtaboutitpodcast.com. You can sign up for our email there. It has our donation tab if you want to make a donation. And the most important thing you could do for us right now is subscribe on our YouTube channel. That's vitally important to us. So if you can continue to like and subscribe, we appreciate it. You guys have a great start to your work week, and we will see you back here on Wednesday. Take care and God bless.
Been listening to the No Doubt About It podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at No Doubt About It Podcast.
No doubt about it.
The No Doubt About It podcast is a Choose Adventure Media production. See you next time on No Doubt About It.
There is no doubt about it.